Hey there, and welcome to the second episode of the Deluxe Mixing Pod. Now today we're going to look back a little so we can look forward and just discuss a few things that I always see discussed in the community that I feel we should address. And the way we're going to approach that is by looking at the way things used to be, the way they are now, and what we can learn from that. So I saw a post this week from a very well-meaning member of the music community. And he said, I say this with optimism that in the future, if music acts own the means of their production and monetization, it will be better. Now, some of you who went to school will probably recognize that as a slight variation of a very famous Karl Marx quote. Not my first rock and roll champion, but we're going to roll with it. He was talking about the workers. And in this way, we can look at musicians being the workers. He said workers could be liberated from this experience by seizing the means of production. And what he was talking about is the fact that people have labor, which they can basically exchange for money. And that's their limitation. Now, by this point in time, we've seized the means of production. So right now, it's never been easier. You can get a computer, a DAW, some microphones, spend some time learning, and as many of you no doubt do on a regular basis, go ahead and make yourself some kind of music which you can then release. Now let's rewind. When I got into this, I too was in a band, and we were your typical dirtbag musicians. We had terrible jobs, and what we had to do was save our money, either from work or from shows, to be able to afford to go into a studio and make demos. Now, we maybe would have liked to have thought of them as records, but we knew they weren't really. And we would use these demos as tools. And that's really the way we should be using current recordings in the indie community as tools. As in, tools which allow us to do other things rather than something we're going to instantly be able to turn into money. At no point did we ever think we would recoup the money we spent on making demos. Whereas today, if you speak to somebody, why don't you want to invest in your music? Well, how am I going to recoup? Well, that's kind of crazy thinking. What you have is the opportunity to create something which you could then base the rest of your activities for, let's say, the next year around. So you could have a release schedule. You have an excuse to create new artwork, new imagery, create new merchandise. Use it as a tool to get yourself shows, to build your fan base, to get playlisted, to get written about on blogs, to maybe, if you're lucky, get on radio. All of the same things. But let's take another step back so we can appreciate where we are today. Let's say you were a local band and you had worked super hard. You've built yourself a local following to the point that you feel like you could make your own record. You could, let's say, press it to vinyl or CD or whatever. Now, once your aspirations got past that point, let's say you wanted to get it into the next town, the next city, the next state, because you started to do regional tours. That was almost impossible to get your record into the stores. To do that, you'd have to get a distribution deal, which meant making it past a set of gatekeepers who would decide whether they truly believed you had enough of a fan base that was worth giving you space on the shelves to put your new record. Today, what happens? You make your record, you upload it to DistroKid or any one of those platforms. In a few days, it's on Spotify and all the streamers. You can upload it yourself to Bandcamp or even your own website if you're that way inclined. None of this was possible. But what that does do, the ease of that process, gives artists unreasonable expectations. going back to the original quote, this kind of utopian view. If you've got the production, you can then control the monetization. Well, that's great, but the middle part is what's missing, and that is building your fan base. If you don't have a fan base, who's going to be buying anything you do? The second thing we're going to look at quickly is if you're a guitar-orientated artist, you need to get in the van. I tried to find examples of indie rock acts, for example, who just made records. And I found maybe a couple of examples which were project bands made of members of already successful bands, but no real examples of bands that just could happily make records and have a sustainable career, even in the age of being able to make money from selling records. So that hasn't changed. If you're unable to do that, you have to moderate your expectations when it comes to building a fan base who follow a kind of music which excels in one place, and that's being live. So consider playing live if you're not. I know it's difficult, it's hard, but it can also be fun. Get out there, build your fan base one at a time. Now, in the old days, let's say you'd made your record, you got your distributor. How are you going to get it onto radio? There weren't streaming services, there weren't playlisters in those days. How could you do that? Again, maybe you knew a guy at the local radio, maybe he would play it for you. Maybe one of these syndicated stations like Z-Rock or something would play it. Great. You just got into thousands of ears who'd never heard of you before. Fantastic. You're winning. But realistically, you had to get a plugger. It wasn't as simple as just saying, I've made a new record. Hey, plugger, go and pimp my record. They couldn't do that. Why? Well, if they wanted to have any credibility when they showed up at the playlist meetings and get the next playlist meeting, they had to show up with things which were good, really good, things that would stand up against other records that were being released. You face the same challenges now as an indie artist, except, as we know, you're really outgunned. Now, this is why I always tell people that they should really invest and put the effort into making fantastic releases. The song is king. That's the advantage you have. The song matters more than the recording, but if the recording is not to a certain standard, it's going to struggle to compete, especially in arenas like radio and playlisting. Now, you can do it yourself, but what you need to do is not use a scattergun approach, find a list of contacts, and then just email them your MP3 or whatever and CC a standard form letter to people. That's never going to work. You're going to have to find people who resonate with your kind of music and attempt to build some kind of at least casual relationship with them before you start sending them material. It's difficult, it's time-consuming, it's not easy. Now, the PR company people have spent years of their career building those relationships, which is why the stuff they present will get listened to first. But as I said, there's going to be a level of gatekeeping there. They're not just going to take you on because you've got some money, and the ones that will take you on because you've got some money are going to be sketchy. Run away. The ones who you want to take you on are the ones who truly believe in you. If they believe in you and they approach the people they play it to with that mindset, you're far more likely to get some kind of traction. So my point is that on one hand, it's the easiest time in the world to be doing this, and at the same time, it's as hard as it's always been. People's expectations are really what has changed. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it's going to work. So what you need to do is be really clever, really focus, work very hard on making your material as strong as it can be and using every opportunity that you can get your hands on. I believe that Spotify, while we all are so mad about the way they treat us and the complete lack of ability to make money from it, is in fact a great opportunity. Why? Well, I'm afraid in the modern times, a lot of people discover most of the music they listen to through hearing it on playlists. I do. Tools like Shazam, for example. People hear a song they like, they're out somewhere, they Shazam it, they now know who the artists are, they then look up that artist. It does happen. I studied it with previous releases from indie artists that I've worked with. So you need to put effort into finding playlisters, building relationships with them, and then getting your stuff playlisted as much as possible. If you don't make the effort, nothing magical is going to happen for you. But it is actually within your power at this time. And if you can engage a professional PR firm, get them to take you on board and you got some cash, good for you. That's probably a more direct route to the prize. You can always learn from looking backwards and appreciate how good we actually have it now. Is it easy? No, but it's never been. Even with these big signed bands that have had thousands and thousands of dollars spent on them, a very small proportion of those actually succeed, which is why, one of the reasons why the traditional recording contract was pretty terrible financially for the artist. It was because they were going to take a loss on something like 90% of the artists, which they actually did invest in. So think about you. You're the only one who can invest in yourself if you're a true indie artist, and I strongly recommend you do that. And you do that from the ground up. You do that from the creation of your music, the production of your music, the mixing of your music, the mastering of your music, and then you continue that through your promotion cycle, because that's the only way you get to the next stage, which is building the fan base, which eventually will lead you to monetization. Well, that's the end of this week's TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please let me know. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Deluxe Mixing Pod.